Welcome to Trinity Radio. I'm Braxton Hunter, and he's
Jonathan Preachett.
We're both here, and we're so excited to be back with you today talking about near-death experiences and demons. More demons than near-death experiences, but still. For everyone, let's see here. I'm noticing Brando's already asking an interesting question. Confirms angels and demons for everyone or just the one who experienced it? Well, that's up for discussion. All right. Jonathan, do you believe in demons?
I do.
I do too, and somebody just clipped us now and is going to oust us as believing in demons.
Yeah, they ought to go clip the first couple weeks of our YouTube videos and see that we've been saying the same thing for...
And Zach, I am so glad that you're here. I met him at the conference, and he was a big help with everything that was happening with the conference. So glad that you're here.
And I guess yeah, that fits.
Yeah. So.
Oh, and he's here too. That guy.
Kevin. Kevin? You talking about Kevin?
No.
Anyway,
I'm saying that's what they're saying about. It's Braxton Hunter. And,
no. Come on now. Someone just
I'm
said
fine with it.
Someone just said today on last week's feed that the dumb one is clearly more attractive. So
I'm dumb and just eye candy.
I think you're assuming you're the dumb attractive one. Anyway, let's jump on to this because Miss Mutola satisfied us all about this by saying last week that we were both beautiful in our own way or something nice like that. So, all right, we're going to talk about demons.
That's modern
and angels
participation trophy stuff.
I'm okay with it. All right, so we're going to talk more about angels and demons. Boy, at the time, I had just discovered how to do a little graphic design, and I was so proud of this little emblem that I created here.
I like it. I think it's not. I can't do any. Have you seen my thumbnails and stuff that I do on my own? I don't know how to do this stuff.
Ivan says Jonathan Preachett is one of my favorite Trinity Radio hosts.
But see, that does. Thank you, Ivan. But dumb and attractive is fine too. You know, I can go with either way.
Yeah, Lior says, will you explain the issue of each person experiencing his religion in NDE? Yes, we will. All right, so let's just jump right into this. So glad that you guys are here. Monica, Black Dream, Mr. Green, Matthew McLean, everybody that's here, thank you so much for showing up. Let's jump right into this, okay, Jonathan? Yeah. And by the way, if you are, I'll just say this now. I'm just going to say it now so they have time. We're going to wait 10 minutes after this stream is done, whenever it ends. And when it ends, we're going to wait 10 minutes, and then in the Trinitarians Patreon-only Facebook group, we are going to do another 15 or 20 minutes of just hanging out with you.
Or 5 if no one shows up.
If no one shows up, if just a couple of people show up, it's just us and you talking. So that'll be cool too. So this is the first time we've ever done this. So
Mr. Green, man, his dude's hilarious.
Yeah. So go to patreon.com/Trinity Radio and sign up if you want to be a part of that. We're going to do that every live stream from now on that we can. And there's some other good stuff coming to patrons pretty soon. So anything you want to say to that, Jonathan? Anything you're going to do in that 15 to 20 minute segment that's going to be star-spangled awesome that they need to be there for?
No.
You're going to say something like, you're going to be there and that's all that matters?
Yeah.
All right, let's get jumping with this thing.
It's our first one, so it's our first after show, so I don't even know what.
We don't know what to do.
You said, hey, let's do an after show for the patrons because we're terrible at doing things for our patrons. Yeah. And so we're like, yeah, okay. And then
I wasn't going to say that, but yes. All right, so Satan.
I'll say it for
what he does. So we're going to start our discussion of demons by talking about Satan. By the way, I'm going to run on the notion that demons are fallen angels. Okay, this is probably the traditional understanding. There are other things going on right now. Heiser's got a view, others have views, but we're going to go with the notion that, is that okay with you, Jonathan, or do you want to argue for some other view?
No. No.
Okay. All right, so here we go. Let's jump into this thing. So Satan means adversary and is used in Scripture to refer to other enemies besides Satan. Devil, or diablos, is the word Jews chose to translate from Satan in the Septuagint. Both are used in the New Testament. He is the evil one. There's some scriptural data for you there. The tempter, the father of lies, the god of this age, the ruler of the power of the air, Did you know that my dad was one of the first preachers in America to have a television ministry? And there was a group in Florida at the time called Acts, the Acts Network, I think, and they had a big banquet. And my dad was invited to speak. And when they introduced him, they said, there's no one that I think more epitomizes the title, the Prince and Power of the Air, than Dr. Harold Hunter. Because he was on the airwaves, television.
That's funny.
Yeah. He is able to disguise...
Who also, by the way, wrote a very good book called, what is it called? Seven Simple Steps to...
Spiritual Warfare.
Spiritual Warfare.
Spiritual warfare. He is able to disguise himself as an angel of light, going to be very important as we consider things, and produce miracles of a sort, tempt, deceive, etc.
7 strategies for spiritual warfare.
There you go.
Yeah, sorry.
What he cannot, he made that book as a new members book back before new members stuff was even a thing.
Yeah.
The devil's primary goal, what he cannot do, not omniscient and limited in power, and by virtue of this is not omnipresent. So what are those verses? Let's look at, not all of these, but let's just look down at 1 Kings 8:39. 1 Kings 8:39 is not on this slide, and I thought, I'm on the wrong slide. Let's see here. Yeah, 1 Kings 8:39 says, then... here in heaven, your dwelling place, and forgiven act and render to each according to all his ways, whose heart you know, for you alone know the hearts of all the sons of men. So now this is actually an interesting question. Let's go on to Job 1:12 first. Then the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your power, only do not put forth your hand on him. So Satan departed from the presence of the Lord. So what we want to say here is that he has limited power in terms of his domain, right? According to Job 1:12. But according to 1 Kings 8:39, only God knows the hearts of men. Now, what I've thought about with this, Jonathan, and I'd like to hear your opinion, is I resized the overlay, and now it's fixed. But I have thought before about Satan or any particular demon, because we think about demons sometimes as like these henchmen that are idiots, but that's just because we've seen henchmen in movies.
Right.
The truth is, these entities, if you find an old man who's lived like a really, really long life and learned a lot of stuff, and then this kind of guy knows some, like there's a reason that with senior adults, we respect them just by virtue of them being old, right? It's because they probably know some stuff. To some degree, you don't respect everyone just because they're old, but you know what I mean. You're not saying anything. Are you tracking with what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, so demons are like really old.
Yes.
They know a lot of stuff. There are people in this lifetime who can correctly predict things just on trends and things like that. So while I think it's fair to say, and I think Scripture indirectly teaches that Satan is not omniscient and can't read your thoughts, he's a really good guesser. And probably most demons are.
Yeah. One of the things that you find just in commonplace among Christian circles, though, is the idea of Satan, at least implicitly, even the people who will affirm, he's not really omnipresent or omniscient like God. But you hear so much about what Satan's doing in everyone's lives, right, that you would think that he is either super fast to get around so much or that he does have these kind of omni properties. And that's a mistake.
Satan functions more like a traditional king or president in that he has to delegate authority for people to go do things. God doesn't have to do that. He has angels, and he has ministering spirits, and he has us as humans who are his followers. But he doesn't have to do that. He does that because he chooses to organize his kingdom that way so that we have roles in his kingdom. Right?
Yeah, but I would say that humans can also be under the powers of the evil, and darkness too. So, in a sense, they're doing the bidding as well.
Oh, they're indirectly glorifying God some way, you mean?
No, they're indirectly doing the bidding of Satan, just as God has us.
Oh, human beings who are... Yeah. That's true. Yeah. So that's true, but...
like internet atheists, for example.
Yeah, for example, when
they are doing the work of beings that they don't believe exist.
Yeah, when they say something like, there's a particular YouTube atheist who I don't want named, who constantly says about us, he thinks that I've really called him Satan or alluded to him as Satan. I wouldn't flatter him with that. Satan is an incredibly, vastly intelligent, vastly knowledgeable entity with vast power and control.
Yeah.
But what I can say is when that same YouTuber claims that he works for Satan and says all these Christian apologists believe it, well, I don't know about all these Christian apologists, but I believe he is, whether he knows it or not. I take him more seriously than he takes himself on a statement like that.
I have no problem making that claim. That's what's happening in the world.
Okay, so let's move on. So the devil's primary goal is to tempt. This is evident from the very first encounter with Eve in the garden. Now, in case you're thinking, well, yeah, but I don't know that that was Satan in the garden with Eve. Well, Revelation 12:9, 22, and 2 Corinthians 11:3 and 14 are places for you to take a look. And since this is recorded, you can go back and get the references that I just mentioned and look those up and see if you think that is indeed indicating that the serpent in the garden was Satan. But in any case, just like a certain YouTuber, whatever it was working for Satan, right? Whether it was Satan or not. And the point is that it seems like the primary goal of the enemy is to tempt. So there's...
I would say deceive. And temptation is a way to bring about his deceptions. But I would say deceiver is probably the main mode of operation for Satan.
Well, let's look a little further at it. Did I skip a thing? Nope, that's where we just were. All right, some simple biblical knowledge tells us that Satan is a fallen angel. God made everything that exists. God created everything good, even if with the capacity to exercise freedom of the will for evil. Therefore, Satan was a creature that rebelled against his maker, whatever you want to call him. Yeah, we covered this last week, so I'm just going to not cover this slide, but encourage people to go back to last week and read these texts completely, not partially, and notice that it specifically says it's talking about a man. And in the case of Tyre, it's talking about a man with trading practices and things like that. So this doesn't sound like Satan. But people have attributed this to Satan. I think that in the issue with Tyre specifically, it may suggest a comparison with Adam rather than Satan. He is twice mentioned as a man, and as I said, his trading practices. And it doesn't say he was a cherub, but with a cherub. So I don't think this is talking about Satan personally.
Yeah.
Preachett, do you?
No.
So when you hear people use the linguistically incorrect term Lucifer, it's not talking about, people have used it to talk about Satan, but that's not like a proper name for Satan. Okay, the demonic, Ephesians 6:12, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. We must resist the belief these principles, rulers, and spiritual forces represent world systems, governments, or institutions. These are terms that first century hearers understood to be referring to evil spirits. This is why we always tell you on the show, don't we, Jonathan, that you have to get the context right. I don't care what those terms indicate to you as a 21st century Westerner. We care what do they indicate to a person living in that context where that was written.
Yes.
Okay. And so as a result of that,
now that's not to say that their effects can't be played out within world systems and governments and all of that. That's not a stand-in phrase for those systems and governments.
Right, you can't apply those to
right.
Joe Biden or whoever's leading in Afghanistan right now or whatever.
Yeah.
You can't. Now, those people are influenced by the demonic to the same degree that lots of people are influenced by the demonic. And what's different is not that the demonic is influencing them, but the level of authority and power that those people have that then the demons,
how much havoc can they wreak because of their position. Yeah.
And as we saw last week, it seems that we're not sure about exactly all the details we would like to, but it seems that there's a hierarchy to the angelic. We can assume there would be a hierarchy to the demonic based on that, like we see in Screwtape Letters, which of course is fictional but still helpful. And so we would expect, I would expect, Jonathan, that whatever demons are assigned to world leaders or whatever, if such a thing is happening, I believe that there's oppression happening and possibly possession, depending on the case. Yeah. But I can't. But and I would imagine that if there is a ranking sort of situation among the demonic, then we're pretty high up there.
Yeah.
Those guys are pretty high up there. I don't mean that we're pretty high up there, although I think we probably are higher than a lot of people are, because we're actively presenting the gospel in a robust way. All right. Paul drew from this reservoir of terminology with which his readers would be readily familiar. Yeah, so that's just a reminder from Clinton Arnold that you're supposed to look at this that way. They attack by temptation, affliction, and possession, and as you said, part of that is deception.
Yeah, I think deception would be the primary aim of Satan, and there's different ways to accomplish that kind of deception. When I think about though how that plays out throughout world systems and stuff, there's a certain segment, and I think Susan was asking about this earlier. How much of that is just fallen man, and how much of that is demonic activity? Right. And then you have to balance that equation with beliefs that, okay, we're sinful enough, even Christians who are trying to be sanctified are sinful enough, we don't need that. And so there's a temptation, though, to downplay all the things that are invisible to us,
Yeah.
And I think that I would rather, and I know this is going to make me sound like a kook, but I would rather err on the side of there's more happening that we don't know than less.
Right.
Right.
It's kind of like some Christians not believing in the demonic. They don't have a problem with angels, but demons all of a sudden gets them to roll their eyes. A person who works here at Trinity said that about a family member, that they're a Christian, but that demons. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, hold on a second. As we said last week, this is something that characterized Jesus' ministry. Yeah. Is exorcism and dealing with the demonic. It's not like one weird ambiguous phrase that you can try to explain away where we don't have to believe in demons. No, this was something Jesus was in a big practice of doing. So, this is a system dependent belief. If you want to believe what Jesus believed, which being a Christian at minimum seems to be believing what we think Jesus believed, right?
You would hope. But I always say err on the side of, yes, fallen human nature can do a whole lot. Mm-hmm. But what is at play when the fallen human nature is expressing itself to do evil? And I err on the side of there's more going on, not less, in the things that we can't see.
Yeah. Samuel Park says, does Trinity Radio support intelligent design? Well, I'm not giving them money, but do I support their cause? Do I agree? Well, yes, of course. All right, let's move
Well, I mean,
on.
in that respect, I support young Earth creationism, old Earth creationism, intelligent design.
I support creationists.
Go find out what you can find out.
And old Earth creationists are still creationists, and even theistic evolutionists are creationists.
Yeah. None of what you're saying has any impact on the way I exegete the first chapter of the Bible. So go do whatever you like. I'm behind you 50%.
Okay. All right. So let's get back into the presentation. All right. So, let's move on to the next slide. And let's see the demonic temptation. Paul believed a penchant toward violating God's standard of holiness characterized all of humanity. This inclination, which he often called the flesh or the old self, is adequate in and of itself to prevent people from pleasing God. Yet, Satan and his powers strike where we are most vulnerable. Our powerful supernatural opponent takes advantage of our bent toward doing precisely what God would not want us to do. He exploits our flesh in his ongoing effort to interrupt God's redemptive purposes. Now, Clinton Arnold is absolutely an Augustinian, and so has an Augustinian understanding of original sin. But whether you take the idea that we are not only born with a sin nature, but also born guilty, or you believe that we were born with a sin nature but not a guilt nature, it still is the case that we have a penchant to go sin, right? The Apostle John called these three temptation paths the lust of the flesh, and the lust, it's supposed to say lust of the eyes, not the list of the eyes, and the boastful pride of life.
Have you ever seen my PowerPoints for my courses?
Are they better than this?
No, that's the first one we've come across. We would have had like 25 by now with, being 45 slides into a presentation. I mean, mine are just loaded with it because I don't proofread.
Yeah, I like this. Miss Mutola says, I like the hymn, A Mighty Fortress. It reminds me of the power of Christ Luther, without downplaying Satan's potency. Yeah.
Yeah.
A mighty fortress.
I mean, Luther wrote some good songs, and I don't even like Luther, but I mean, he wrote some good songs. It's fine. You don't have to like everything about Martin Luther to say he did something good.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then Satan appealed to all three of these wrongful desires, both when he tempted Eve in the garden and when he tempted Jesus in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
Affliction. 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 10 reveals that Paul was physically afflicted by a demon.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is there's this large segment of Christians who think that around 70 AD, the demons packed it up and went home.
Right.
You know,
They gave up.
Yeah, and you know, you think about that, and I don't know, but I don't think so. And so when
I have no reason to believe so, and on top of that,
yeah, even
the evil that I see, I think is better explained by there being demonic work.
And because Chris Date insists upon this, I'm going to follow Chris Date's advice because I'm a preterist. Not qualifying it, because anything beyond that is heretical.
Yes, full preterism is heretical,
right.
So you're going to let
Let's
me qualify
but
it.
He was like, let's stop calling it partial preterism. Let's just call the Orthodox view preterist.
You should. That should be.
Even as a preterist, I see no reason to think that Satan and his demons packed it up and went home.
No reason to think that.
No reason to think
and
that.
Here's the passage where Paul asks, by the way, I've always wondered about hardcore charismatics with this, because here's none less than the Apostle Paul praying 3 times that an affliction be removed, and it wasn't. But here it is. Because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, for this reason, to keep me from exalting myself, there was given me a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. Now, actually, we could translate that angel of Satan, but we'll go with messenger of Satan, which is also possible translation. Mm-hmm. To keep me from exalting myself. Concerning this, I implored the Lord 3 times that it might leave me.
See,
when I implored the Lord to leave me, I implored the Lord to leave.
It would have been the 4th Paul, that would have worked.
When I implore the Lord to take a problem away from me or an affliction away from me, I pray more than 3 times before I start praying.
Well, you babble on like the pagans instead of doing what Jesus said. Just
because that's what that means. God may allow this sort of affliction in order to make us into something. Okay, let's see. Concerning this, I implored the Lord 3 times that it might be. And he has said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness.
Right, when you get to the 3rd one and then God tells you something, you shut up.
Most gladly, therefore, I will rather boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. Therefore, I am well content with weaknesses, with insults, with distress, with persecutions, with difficulties, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong.
Bam.
Okay, this has implications for responding to the problem of suffering, right? Because it may be, like in Paul's case, God allows this to happen so that Paul's character is built. Paul tells us that he knows that, all right? So Paul had an infirmity and was able to identify its origin. So someone has said here, quoting Bill Johnson, obviously it wasn't physical. Jamie Ammon says that. I don't know why one would draw that conclusion necessarily from what's going on here. My take on this is
he put that in quotes. Bill Johnson, right? That's Bill Johnson.
Right, that's Bill Johnson saying that. Yeah. But here's the thing. Some people take this as purely a physical affliction that God didn't remove. Some people take it as some sort of demonic influence that God didn't remove. I think this was a demonic influence that had a physical manifestation. Something happened to Paul. And so this implication for respect. Let's see. Sickness and infirmity can have a direct demonic cause, Clinton Arnold says, agreeing with me, or I say agreeing with him. Okay, Scripture does not reveal how someone becomes demon-possessed, but Matthew 12:43 through 45 and Luke 11:12-24 through 26 does liken individuals to houses that are vacant and then entered by a demon. Thus, if a house is not filled by the Holy Spirit, it can become possessed, it seems to be the implication
of that, yeah.
Do you agree, Preachett?
Yeah, and it's worth noting, and if you want to get an exhaustive YouTube treatment, go check out what Mike Winger's doing on the longer ending of Mark. But I want to say, whatever you make of the longer ending of Mark, and I don't think that it's part of the original, but what it does evidence for us is what early Christians were thinking about these things when they added it or edited it to make it longer. Whatever you want to say, it's still centuries old. I mean, it's not like the longer ending of Mark circulated 50 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So you have an insight into what early Christians thought, and Jesus, in addition to talking about the snakes and stuff, talks about driving out demons.
Yeah.
They put that in the mouths of Jesus. So what that tells us is even the early Christians after 70 AD for sure, their impression was that that driving out demons was going to be a part of the Christian life. Mm-hmm. And that's not saying that that's true. That's saying what they expected.
Yeah.
And that they expected it, and nobody ever said, no, let's get this longer ending out because that's not part of the tradition. Yeah. And that's why I always appeal to that. Like if I'm debating a cessationist, right? Mm-hmm. I'll bring up the longer ending of Mark and I will qualify it. Yeah, it's not in the original. That doesn't matter. It is early evidence, that they didn't expect the sign gifts to cease. Mm-hmm. They expected this to be a part of the Christian, not for every believer.
And why
perhaps.
Not?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you think that?
Right.
The only reason to think otherwise is because cessationists have come up with really interesting, but frankly, really strange ways of indicating that the sign gifts ended with the apostles.
Right. And if you want to see a case for cessationism that's better than most cessationists can make, become a patron at Trinity, and I have a video where I make the case for cessationism better than cessationists. I have no doubt. And then you can see my response to it.
Yeah, don't just watch that one video, or else you'll be a cessationist.
Yeah, I'm pretty convincing.
All right, so I
got that from Steve Gregg. Do the best you can, and then tear it down.
Interestingly, with other problems, men can approach Jesus for deliverance from their afflictions, but no demoniac ever approached Jesus asking for help. Instead, a loved one or a friend brought the demonized person to Jesus, or Jesus encountered the individual and took it upon himself to cast out the demon. Whoa. Usually Jewish exorcism involved amulets or other religious objects, but Jesus was able to cast demons out by his own authority. And this ability was passed on to followers of Jesus in the New Testament, as you just said. Jesus speaks of the struggle with Satan. Huh?
When they wanted to get rid of in Tobit, when they were trying to drive away but that wasn't a possession though. But I mean, you can still run them off.
Drew, I'm glad you showed up because I have a video dropping tomorrow that I mention you in.
Yes.
All right,
Drew has been my hero for, when was that debate?
2019.
Yeah, you've been my hero for going on 2 years now, man.
Drew has?
Yes.
Because of that instance?
Because of that one. Well, I mean, that's how, I knew him he had been participating in our forum, but that he got up and, before that, but then I, really recognized who he was, put the guy's name to when he stood up and did that, and then I've just been Team Drew ever since.
Well, just so everyone knows.
And Braxton, you've come around to Team Drew, so.
This is a mess. I'm sorry, guys. All right, this is coming tomorrow, Atheists versus Atheists. Recognize any of those guys? The patrons already have this, by the way. That's the benefit of being a patron. Anyway, all right, let's move on.
It's a fun video.
Here Satan is the strong man, and Jesus speaks of the struggle with Satan, the strong man, saying, no one can enter a strong man's house and carry off his possessions unless he first ties up the strong man, then he can rob his house. Here Satan is the strong man, and people are his possessions, but Jesus dealt a decisive blow against the strong man at the cross. In John's recounting of Jesus' passion prediction, Jesus said, now is the time for judgment on this world. Now the prince of this world will be driven out. Later in the same gospel, Jesus speaks of the Spirit convicting the world concerning judgment because the prince of this world now stands condemned. Satan still has some control, but now that he has defeated, the church can flourish. Preachett?
I was reading the comments. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Any good comments I need to throw up?
Well, they're talking about some people give convincing arguments that the longer ending of Mark is authentic, and yeah, there's people who give what's his name?
I don't know, but this is
there's a Greek scholar. I can't think of his name right now. He gives a pretty good argument for the woman caught in adultery in John 7 through 8, whatever, the tail end of John 7 through 8 something. I can't remember the exact verses. I'm not a Johannine scholar, but that woman in the well story. I mean, not woman in the well. The woman caught in adultery and okay. There are people who give compelling arguments that that's authentic.
Sure. There's a sculpture from very early, I think 2nd century, that contains, it's a sculpture of that story, I think.
So, I mean, when I say, if the longer ending of Mark is authentic, fine. But like I said, I'm not saying I'm 100% certain, but I just like the story of the woman caught in adultery. These are things that I don't accept authentic until I have better reasoning to. But it's not like I'm against the idea. So, I would be happy if I could affirm the longer ending of Mark being authentic, because that kills cessationism once for all. But
Tim says, speaking of a Drew, did you guys watch the new GMS, Genetically Modified Skeptic video on the young Jesus? Do you guys believe Jesus was all-knowing? What was he like as a kid? So we don't have to wonder too much, because that very passage, Luke 2, toward the end of Luke 2 is famous for the birth narratives, but if I remember correctly, that's also where the story is of Jesus slipping away and his parents having to go back to the temple and find him. And we learn at the end of that chapter that Jesus grew in stature and in knowledge. So part of what happened with the incarnation is that Jesus depended on the Father for these items of omniscience that he would not know. But I think that Jesus had the power to know things that he did not know if he so chose.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with, and look how magnanimous I'm going to be. I'm going to even commend a book of my old nemesis, Theodore Zachariades. Actually wrote a pretty decent treatment in his it was his dissertation at Southern on the omnipresence of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so if you're interested in that and those kinds of things of the omnis as it pertains to Jesus, go check out Zachariades' book from Interlibrary Loan. Don't pay any money for it.
Praise the Lord.
See, halfway nice. Commend the book, but don't buy it. Get it through Interlibrary Loan.
Now, here's a possibility about the longer ending of Mark and the woman caught in adultery in Acts 7. Is it Acts 7:47, I think? I don't know. While we're on the subject, I don't think they're authentic, but I think God meant for them to be in the Bible. Now, it is possible. It is possible that God, what do you want to call that?
Providentially
managed things such
to keep that. Yeah, exactly. And let me tell you what's wrong with that argument. The same way that God providentially managed to make the King James Version a perfect Bible, that's the same kind of thinking. So,
well, if the King James Bible popped out like a century after,
with that kind of reasoning. No, I'm glad we have the longer ending of Mark, because, like I said, and I'm glad we have the woman caught in adultery. Is it consistent with it? Is the longer? Yeah, I mean, Paul didn't die from a snake bite. Is it consistent with what else we find?
Yes.
Yes. The woman caught in adultery, is that consistent with what we find about Jesus from all the other data?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm actually glad that we have that. And even if they're not authentic, I think that they are a good insight into how people, the ancient Christians, would have thought about those kind of things.
Now, on Luke 10:17 through 20, I say it shows that Jesus passed on the ability to cast out demons to followers, and two, they should be happier about their salvation than they are about the ability to cast out demons. Luke 10:17 says, the 70 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. Now, notice, this is the context, because this is a passage that is ripped out of context quite regularly. And it says, and he said to them, I was watching Satan fall from heaven like lightning. What does he mean? Does he mean before the creation of the world or before the creation of earth, he watched Satan fall from heaven like lightning? Or does he mean he watched as his disciples went out, 70 of them, and were casting out demons in his name, which is the context of this? And he said it was like, I would paraphrase this as, it was like watching Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Something to consider. Behold, I've given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing will injure you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are recorded in heaven. Again, it's not about speaking in tongues. It's not just about prophecy. It's not about these incredible gifts, the ability to cast out demons. It's about, are you saved? That's what you should be most happy about. Do you know Jesus? And people get feeling like second-class citizens in the kingdom because everyone else in the church is like speaking in tongues or doing these miracles and doing all these amazing things. Remember that in Matthew 7, Jesus said that these guys did all these awesome things, and I don't know you. So what makes you a first-class citizen in heaven? Knowing Jesus.
Do you feel that way? I mean, we don't.
Not in the least.
We don't. Yeah, I don't either.
I don't have any superpowers.
You should never. Yeah, I don't have any superpowers. You should never look. If you are a continuationist or full-blown charismatic, and yet you don't have any of those
cool
superpowers, the cool superpower, it's fine. The Spirit gives it to whoever He wills. That I didn't get it. It doesn't. I'd be awesome. I pray, seek the gifts, pray for it. But if it doesn't happen, my day has not been,
hey,
ruined
John
because
Carlos,
I don't speak in tongues.
Perhaps.
Now, what's dangerous though, and I have
spit it out now. Preachett.
I have Assemblies of God family members, and they know I love them, and I'm a fan of the denomination in general. But as long as one of their cardinal doctrines is that's evidence of the Holy Spirit baptism, I could never participate.
Buy in.
Yeah, I can't buy that. And I think pre-mill dispensationalism is one of their things that you have to sink into, and they need to get rid of that. But it becomes dangerous because people that don't speak in tongues, unless they're faking it because they don't want to feel awkward or left out or not a Christian.
Well, Ivan J says the expectation of tongues crushed my wife's faith. She's better now, but it really messed her up for a bit.
Yeah, it's a train wreck, and they need to get over that.
Sam says we both have superpowers to him. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
All right, so it is reasonable to believe that since demonic temptation still occurs, that demonic affliction and possession does as well. The Western Protestant Church has largely, this is me preaching to my own people and self to a certain degree, ignored or been uncertain how to deal with this issue. Because of this, the Catholic Church has generated most of the data on the subject of modern exorcism. Regardless of whether the Catholic Church is successful or using the right tactics, they are cautious in the evaluation of candidates for the rite of exorcism.
There was a fascinating conversation on Pitance with Aquinas on
and capturing Christianity.
Yeah. Well, I saw the one with Pitance with Aquinas because I'm not a Catholicator, so I like the Catholic stuff and yeah, they're on top of this. What do I make of it? I don't. Could be. I don't discount.
What do I make of it? I think they're dealing with real possessions.
Yeah, it's like I don't discount it. So, I mean, I don't know if they're doing it right, but because I don't know anything about it.
Well, let me just inform you about it a little bit. Candidates must endure extensive psychological evaluations, and most are never involved in an actual exorcism. Currently, there are 10 Catholic exorcists in the United States. I don't know if that's still true. It was true at the time. I think there's more now. But they bring in like secular psychologists to deal with someone to try and figure out, is there anything here? And it's something like 1 in 1,000, I think they said, on Capturing Christianity. I could have that number wrong, that are brought to them that actually they think turn out to be, actual possessions. Zach McCrae says, can someone make lo-fi Preachett to study to? I don't know what you mean. You want to just have 10 hours of ambient music playing and Preachett working at a desk? Is that what you want? How the Evangelical Church should approach this should be a serious issue of discussion.
See, but there's a problem in that because you're either going to get tagged as some crazy charismatic, right?
I'm about to.
Huh?
I'm about to.
Yeah. Or you're going to get tagged as not just a crazy charismatic, but as like a fringe Christian.
You guys want to hear a possession story? Go ahead.
In evangelicalism, it's like the third rail. Nobody wants to really touch it among you.
I want to touch all over it.
Right. I don't. What are we? Either the Bible is true, or not. If you're a cessationist and on top of that believe that all, which is weird because a lot of cessationists are dispensational. But if you're a cessationist and on top of that you think all the demons packed up and went home, or there's no possible way any single person can be used to cast out a demon, Jesus' name stopped working with the death of, whatever you believe about that, those people are going to just, you're a fraud, you're a fraud, you're a fraud. And so nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to go near it.
Well, Richard E. Gallacher.
Except for J.P. Moreland, he'll get all over
Richard
it.
E. Gallagher, MD, will as well. He's got a new book out on 20 years of working with exorcists on this issue. He is a board-certified psychiatrist in private practice in Hawthorne, New York, an associate professor of clinical psychiatry at New York Medical College. He's also on the faculties of the Columbia University Psychoanalytic Institute and a Roman Catholic seminary. He is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Princeton University, magna cum laude in classics, and trained in psychiatry at the Yale University School of Medicine. Dr. Gallacher is the only American psychiatrist to have been a consistent U.S. delegate to the International Association of Exorcists and has addressed its plenary session. Amid widespread confusion and
skepticism. This is not to take away from him, but real
about
quick,
the subject.
You emphasized Yale.
Yeah.
I'm at the point in my life where Yale and Harvard and Oxford, not impressive.
But there are people to whom it is
your
impressive,
institutions are a joke now.
and they're the people who would deny this sort of thing.
Your
The chief goal of
institutions
this
are
article is to
increasingly
demonstrate
becoming-
a contemporary and clear case of demonic possession. All right, here comes some reading. Jonathan, would you like to read it, or would you like me to
keep
read it?
going.
This need for caution and precision is especially important at a time when untrained laymen or worse, public ministries may unfortunately mislead or even exploit the faith. Okay. Possession is, there's a lot of it. Okay, so here's the case of modern day demoniac that Gallacher gives. To show first that the devil, however rarely, may indeed attack by possession an individual, I present here a detailed summary of a present-day demonic possession. It is truly an obvious example of a genuine attack, at least to an objective observer. Each case of possession as well as oppression is, in one sense, unique. What makes this example especially singular, but also particularly and powerfully convincing, is that the woman involved not only exhibited, in a highly dramatic fashion, the classic signs of possession, but having been an avowed and prominent Satanist in her life, also seemed to display special occult powers even outside her trance states, not infrequently in a quite open manner to anyone who came in close contact with her. All the facts presented here are true and verifiable by the multiple and highly credible individuals involved in her case. For reasons of confidentiality, we will identify our subject with a pseudonym. She agreed to have her story published if she were not identifying, and little incident material is included. Julia is a middle-aged, self-supporting Caucasian woman who lives in the U.S. She first approached her local clergy on her own and was soon referred to an official priest exorcist who collaborated on this article to explore getting help. She herself was quite convinced from the start that she was being attacked in some way by a demon or Satan. During the course of her lengthy and thorough evaluation, she was eventually seen by this writer, a board-certified academic psychiatrist who was asked to provide a medical and psychiatric opinion. Julia revealed a long, disturbing history of involvement with explicitly satanic groups, an obvious historical antecedent to her then-present condition and to her accompanying psychic abilities as they might be characterized. Though raised a Catholic, she no longer practiced the faith, but with considerable ambivalence, she stated that she might need a Catholic rite of exorcism. She was not the typical type of individual who frequently importunes the church for help, but who is really in need of psychiatric or other medical intervention. She was in no way psychotic. In fact, she was consistently logical, highly intelligent, and even quite engaging at times, despite her obvious turmoil. Periodically in our presence, Julia would go into a trance state of a recurring nature. Mentally troubled individuals often dissociate, but Julia's stances were accompanied by an unusual phenomenon. Out of her mouth would come various threats, taunts, and scatological language. Phrases like, "Leave her alone, you idiots," "She's ours," "Leave, you imbecile priest," or just "leave." The tone of this voice differed markedly from Julia's own, and it varied, sometimes sounding guttural and vaguely masculine, at other points high-pitched. Most of her comments during these trances or at the subsequent exorcism displayed a marked contempt of anything religious or sacred. I know this is killing you, Jonathan, but just hang with me.
No, it's not
When
killing me.
Julia
It's
came out of
story.
these trances, she strongly professed no recollection of these remarks or of having said anything at all. An experienced psychiatrist might well conclude that we were probably therefore dealing with a dissociated personality or, more precisely, even dissociative identity disorder, elaborated on later. What quickly made this understandable hypothesis implausible, however, were several other peculiar, though obviously related phenomenon, but a sampling of which is covered here. Because of the complexity of this case, we assembled a team to assist. At various points, this group comprised several qualified mental health professionals, at least 4 Catholic priests, a deacon and his wife, 2 nuns, both nurses, 1 psychiatric, and several lay volunteers. We made a number of phone calls to arrange gathering together to help Julia. Julia herself was not in on these phone discussions. She was far from the area at the time. Astonishingly, Julia's other voices, again, sometimes deep, sometimes high-pitched, would actually interrupt the telephone conversations and somehow come in over the phone line. The voice would espouse the same messages. Leave her alone. Leave, you idiots. Get out of her hair. She's ours. Julia again said later that she was unaware of any such conversations, and yet the speech was heard distinctly by several of the team on a number of occasions. As mentioned, even outside her trances, Julia unmistakably displayed psychic abilities. Put another way, her presence was clearly associated with paranormal events. Sometimes objects around her would fly off the shelves, or the rare phenomenon of psychokinesis known to parapsychologists. Julia was also in possession of knowledge of facts and occurrences beyond any possibility of their natural acquisition. She commonly reported information about the relatives, household compositions, family deaths and illnesses, etc. of members of our team without ever having observed or even been informed about them. As an example, she knew the personality and precise manner of death, the exact type of cancer, of a relative in the team member that no one could conceivably have guessed. All right, there's a lot more here, and obviously the exorcism itself, but I just mentioned this to show you that there are highly evidenced accounts that involve stuff that can't happen naturalistically. And if you want more of this on this case and others, you can check out Gallacher's book. Gallacher's book came out about a year ago now. It was in October of last year. And the name of the book, if you put in Richard Gallacher, you will come up with, I don't know, because I can't find it now, but it's there somewhere. Check out Richard Gallacher's book on this subject soon. So, Preachett, what do you think about this? You have any trouble believing this sort of thing?
No. I certainly believe that kind of thing could happen. And I don't know about this particular instance, but that seems compelling to me. But again, no matter how many psychologists or psychiatrists you bring in, I want to go back to this idea of there being a spectrum there, right? How much of that could be mental illness, how much, naturally, and how much of that could be, not with this particular instance, I'm not saying, but just in general, because there's a lot of people who think that certain mental problems are 100% attributed to demonic activity.
Right.
And then on the other side of the spectrum, none of it is, right? And so there's a spectrum there, and I think that's where it complicates people because it's not an either or in most cases.
Yeah. So let's take a look at Christ victorious, good will prevail.
But here's the thing. For the people who approach this stuff always with skepticism. I don't know if that story, that's about as good evidence as you're going to find on these kinds of stories.
Now? Say that again.
That's about as good of an evidenced case as you're going to likely find.
Yeah, you've got psychiatrists saying it's not a psychiatric illness that we're aware of.
So if you're a Christian, for example, and you're super skeptical of that, if your instinct is to tell you to discount it until you have, there's probably not much more evidence you can get. And at that point, why believe that casting out demons was a regular occurrence for Jesus and his disciples, and then all of a sudden it is impossible that demons possess people and that they can get tossed out in the modern world? Mm-hmm. It just seems like you're ratcheting up the kind of skepticism that no matter what evidence is produced, you're always going to find a reason to not believe it.
Right.
And what separates you from an atheist who refuses and just sticks his fingers in his ears and screams real loud, no matter how much evidence you produce for God, that you might as well have the same thing, as them, because I don't see either all of this stuff in the Bible, that nothing about this story conflicts with what we find in the Bible, or it's possible, Mm-hmm. Either you believe in angels and demons or you don't. Either you believe in exorcisms or you don't.
Yeah, and in fact, someone just mentioned over here.
And even if that story turns out to be false, it doesn't mean that other stories are all false either.
M. Scott Peck's book, he says People of the Lie. People of the Lie is a very famous one, perhaps his most famous. But the book that I read on this, where he actually gives several cases, is called Glimpses of the Devil. So I encourage you to check that out. Although there's a very concerning one about a young girl that when he thinks the demonic actually gained influence, that I don't buy for 1 second. But I think in general it's a good book. All right, so let's move on to this. What about Katie? Did Katie see an angel? During her comatose state, she said that an angel named Elizabeth allowed her to view her family at home. Katie correctly reported very specific details concerning the clothing and positions of each family member, identified a popular rock song that her sister listened to, and observed her father, and then watched while her mother cooked dinner. She even correctly identified the food, roast chicken and rice. Later, she shocked her parents by relating details from just a few days before. Now,
what is the first thing that should go up for everyone who was listening to last week's thing?
What? Just because it's an angel doesn't mean it's a good angel?
Her name is Elizabeth.
Yeah.
From all the data we know, what are angels?
Actually, angels are non-material that can manifest a physical body. So, yes, most, if not all, there is one case that's a little that we're not sure about, are masculine.
Yeah.
But we can't say for sure. Why would God create...
I got into this. This was a tangent that I got in on a hell review debate with Chris, and I think it was Darren. We were talking about this, and I derailed the conversation because people assume that there is no kind of material whatsoever with angelic beings.
Well, the scripture is clear that they're spirit.
Yeah.
But we also see in scripture that they manifest a physical body because they eat fish, for example.
Right. But I don't know that even you can argue that spirit means entirely immaterial.
Well, Chris Tate would certainly agree with you. He'd say in some instances it just means air.
So I don't know.
But let me give you the account, and you argue against it.
Okay.
This comes to us from a Biola, your place, Preachett. A Biola article called "What Can Be Learned from Near-Death Experiences" by Gary Habermas, but he's quoting a doctor here. So here's what it says. For instance, in a well-documented incident, a young girl had this is not as much reading, nearly drowned, not registering a pulse for 19 minutes. The emergency room physician observed that he stood over Katie's lifeless body in the intensive care unit. A CT scan showed that she had massive brain swelling and she was without a gag reflex while being profoundly comatose. Dr. Melvin Morse reported, quote, "When I first saw her, her pupils were fixed and dilated, meaning the irreversible brain damage had most likely occurred. Her breathing was performed artificially and she was given very little chance to survive. But only 3 days later, the girl surprisingly revived and made a full recovery. Katie began reporting an incredible wealth of specific facts regarding the emergency room, her resuscitation, and even physical descriptions of the two physicians. Morse confirmed that a child with Katie's symptoms should have the absence of any brain function and therefore should comprehend nothing. Katie recalled these recent details for almost an hour. Further, during her comatose state, she said that an angel named Elizabeth allowed her to view her family at home. Katie correctly reported very specific details concerning the clothing and positions of each family member, identified a popular rock song that her sister was listening to on the radio, observed her father, and then watched while her mother cooked dinner. She even correctly identified the food. We read that before. So, so is this an NDE? Obviously,
no, that I don't have a problem with.
You can't see what she saw.
I don't have a problem with there being some being that she identified as Elizabeth.
Yeah. You're saying it could be a demon because angels are never girls.
Well, I mean,
is that what
I don't
we're doing?
even want to make the claim that they're never girls, but
I think that's what you're arguing.
But every time Yahweh sends an angel, they appear masculine.
That we have recorded.
Not everything that is true about angels is going to be in the Bible. I said that last week. But like I said, I don't have a problem with NDEs. I don't have a problem with that even happening. It's not consistent with the biblical data.
It's not inconsistent with the biblical data.
It
is absence of evidence of absence?
No, but it is inconsistent with.
You're saying we've never seen a female angel, so we have no reason to believe there are female angels.
No. I have no reason to believe that this was like an angel in the sense of being sent by Yahweh.
Because you have a belief that if an angel is sent by Yahweh, it has to be male.
I'm saying consistently, it typically is.
It is male. It tends to be male.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in
So
any
I'm saying
case,
that's an inconsistency.
but you believe this was a real NDE. You believe that she had
encountered something
right
identifying as
and
Elizabeth.
it's a highly evidential.
Yeah. That I have no problem with. I'm
so
just talking about, did God send her
You're
an
just trying to
angel?
figure out, is this some rogue angel? Is this an angel sent by Yahweh? Or is this a demon?
Right.
Okay. That's fair. All right. According to a 1982 Gallup poll, 5% of the general population in the United States had undergone a near-death experience. That was around 8 million people then. Now 5% is closer to 15 million people. This alone should be reason enough to give NDEs a second look. That's from the big book of near-death experiences. Here's some commonalities for near-death experiences if you're wondering. These are commonalities. These aren't every case, but these are very common. Perhaps the most well-known ever published book, the most well-known work ever published on the subject of NDEs is the best-selling Life After Life by Raymond Moody. In it, he lays out several commonalities. Ineffability beyond the limits of any language to describe, hearing yourself pronounced dead, feelings of peace and quiet, hearing unusual noises, seeing a dark tunnel, finding yourself outside your body, meeting spiritual beings. A very bright light, experienced as a being of light, a panoramic life review, sensing a border or limit to which you can go, coming back into your body, frustrating attempts to tell others about what happened to you, I bet. Subtle broadening and deepening of your life afterward, elimination of fear of death, corroboration of events witnessed while out of your body. That's what happened with Katie. A realm where all knowledge exists, cities of light. That's one that my surrogate big sister, Michelle Skusel, who was my former secretary's daughter, I grew up with, she died a few years ago, and they took her off all the drugs and everything because she requested it. And the night that she died, she claimed that she could see a city of light. So this is all interesting stuff, I think. Go ahead, Preachett.
Yeah, I was reading Zach Weston's comment. Lots of NDE accounts don't seem to align with biblical revelation. I agree with that, and that's what I'm saying about this instance with Katie. That doesn't mean that it didn't happen, though. I want to make the distinction. I agree with Zach's comment. Yeah, what they're describing doesn't align with what we know from the biblical data. That doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It doesn't mean that something else isn't going on that would be consistent.
Also,
with
what biblical data?
Because,
like, are we talking about it's appointed unto man once to die and after that the judgment? Because with that particular text, that's clearly a generality, like the wisdom literature is generalities. But it's not true in every case because it wasn't appointed to Lazarus once to die and after that the judgment.
Right.
It wasn't appointed to Elijah and Enoch that after they die there'd be the judgment.
Yeah.
They didn't die at all. With Lazarus, he died twice.
Or any resuscitation case for that matter.
Right. These are near-death experiences and not total death experiences anyway.
Right.
We're only mostly dead, right? And then secondly, someone asked at the top of the show, what about the fact that people tend to have near-death experiences that reflect their own religion? Here's the thing. If you look at what they experience, the commonalities are what I've just listed. They encounter beings of light, but unless the being of light has a name tag that says Yahweh or Allah or whatever else, they're going to presume and project onto those things their own cultural experiences. And that's not just me shooting off at the mouth. That seems to be reflected in all Gary Habermas's work. And even years ago, Dinesh D'Souza did a book on this, and it contained that. And I have a book on this called Death is a Doorway if you're interested in it. Not just on this, but it covers this. Yeah. Now, what about NDE people who are non-believers having positive experiences and being told they are accepted? I'd have to see a specific case of that. I'm not sure about that particularly. We'd have to take those on case by case. All right. So we're pretty well.
But if the major mode of Satan is deception. Mm-hmm. If you have a supernatural experience, like you could plausibly argue an NDE would be, right, that has certain phenomenon, it could be deceptive. And think about the people who believe that happened. Where does it steer them away from? The truth.
Right. This is a fair point.
So,
tests for determining whether near-death experiences are evidential. These are my tests, I think. Documented by a medical doctor or nurse. Documented shortly after the patient was resuscitated. We don't want to wait 5 months where this person drums up a story like Malarkey did and then has to recant later. Testable. How would it be testable? Well, if they're talking about things that were going on somewhere else besides the room where the surgery is happening, or they're talking about things going on in the OR when they have no brainwave and no heart rate, then that seems like they passed a test, right? That this is evidential and must be logically consistent. If someone says they saw a married bachelor in their dream, they didn't, because that's impossible. Jamie Ammons says, do you guys know anything about
Thank
the
you
guy,
for the super chat,
Eben Alexander, that Cameron just had on? I've heard there's good reason to think he's a fraud. I know that he was on Cameron's show. I don't know anything else about him. I'm sorry, but thank you for the super chat. All right.
I've never heard of him, and I haven't seen
Here are some unreliable tests, according to Boa and Bowman from Sense and Nonsense about angels and demons. One, the angel is a figure of bright light. Well, okay, but we already saw that Satan can appear as a beautiful figure of light. The angel seems to be good. Well, okay, bad. Did your parents never tell you not to get into someone's car because they offer you candy? The angel claims to be from God or from heaven, right? Because demons can't lie. Sarcasm. The angel quotes the Bible. Well, we know that Satan quoted the Bible.
Yeah.
The angel does something amazing. Well, Satan does something amazing. The angel mysteriously disappears. Also no good. Would you like to hear some good tests? I think. Well, we can look at those as soon as I find them. Whenever someone claims to have seen an angel, there are always 5 possibilities. 1, they saw a human being and thought it was an angel. That could happen. Mm-hmm. 2, they were mistaken and they did not see anyone. 3, they lied. They did not see anyone. 4, they saw an actual good angel, is a possibility. Or 5, they saw an actual angel, but it was a demon. Okay, these are always possibilities. But here's some good tests that Boa and Bowman recommend. Passes the negative test. Naturally inexplicable or unmistakable. The angel is glorifying to Jesus and very verifiable. And we should always be very, very cautious of angel claims, even if an angel encounter passes the above tests. And that's pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, that's reasonable. You know, I'm always, like I said, if I say that, well, you know, I think that happened. That doesn't mean like I'm 100% Cartesian certainty that happened and I'm committed to the position, but being open to it's like, yeah, that sounds reasonable. That sounds plausible. That could totally be the case. So I get why non-Christians are skeptical about all of this.
I'm skeptical about a lot of them.
Yeah.
But Slam RN here.
No, I'm talking about, but I don't understand the attitude that none of them are true.
Yeah. Slam RN is a nurse. She said, we had a patient who we resuscitated and he went to a very bad place. He was frightened to death and was afraid to be by himself after that.
I'd imagine.
So that's the end of the presentation.
You don't know if brain activity, you know, created some kind of an awareness of imagery, you know, naturalistically or not. So you never know, but because you don't ever know, you have to, you know, don't be so open that you just believe everything, but don't be so dismissive that you believe nothing. Because then you have to start, because then you need to start rethinking your worldview. You know, if I don't believe anything that shows up in the Bible that it could, you know, how different is the world now than it used to be 2,000 years ago? Is it to the point so different that we have better explanations for this data, and maybe Christianity, you know, not my thing anymore? Which is fine if that's where you come to, but if you believe in the Bible and you believe in Jesus, you ought to not be so embarrassed about your beliefs in angels and demons and the possibility of exorcisms and near-death experiences and everything else. I don't understand the. I think Craig Keener would back me up on this. A contemporary Western predisposition to reject all of this stuff, even among believers.
Zach Weston agrees, and Mr. Green says, I have enjoyed your presentation here. All right, thank you. And Drew says, do you guys think demon-possessed is a good translation of daemonizomai? Would you agree that inhabitation is probably a better word than possession? It might be, but the term is so prolific now, so ubiquitous in this discussion, it might be counterproductive to try and change that. But I do agree because because to what degree do they possess the person, and they're not always manifest in the person. So it might be just like you are not always manifest in your own home.
Well, if you wanted to keep the language of, if you want to keep that language of possession, you could refer to inhabitation as presence and possession as overcoming, in the sense that they've taken over control.
Ivan says, I have a fear that a demon may overhear me talking about something that scares me and will then use that against me. Is that irrational? Can demons read minds?
No.
Well, as we discussed at the top of the show, no, the Bible teaches that only God knows the heart of man, the heart of men, but they're good guessers. So whether you say it out loud or not, they probably are good guessers about that. But don't worry, because you can overcome that sort of thing by relying on the Lord Jesus.
Like if you're asking, can they hear that? Can they read minds in the sense of know your inner thoughts?
I don't believe so. There's nothing that indicates to me anywhere in Scripture that that's the case.
But they don't need to do that to be effective in draw. I would say better to think that they're keen observers of your behavior and activities. And if they are monitoring that, they know how to get to you. But I don't always know, just like I don't think everyone's assigned a guardian angel necessarily. I don't think that everyone's been assigned a demon that's just sitting over your shoulder 24/7, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying it's irrational, but I'm not saying you should probably relax a little bit.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. We've gone for an hour and 10 minutes. We're going to go ahead and jump off of here. But remember, you can show up on Facebook in just a few minutes. We're going to give you, let's say, 2:20. We're going to show up in the Trinitarians Patreon-only Facebook group. The link, you can search it, but the link is also available at patreon.com/TrinityRadio. And we look forward to seeing you there in just a few moments, and we appreciate the support that you're giving us. Hope you've enjoyed this show. I'll go ahead and start the music. Preachett, you feel like this has been good?
I've enjoyed it, talking about Bible-y stuff. Not just talking about what atheists on the internet are whining about.
Yeah, this was completely theological, this episode, with a little bit of apologetics mixed in.
Well, it's all overlap.
Thank you all for being here so much. I so appreciate it. And we will see you next time on Trinity Radio. If you're prepared, cast it out in Jesus' name. If you're not prepared, call Preachett. What we'll be discussing at 2:20 is, would you be an exorcist?